baby. Man, what an action-packed off day we have here today.
Oh, man.
Adam's excited for the show.
Sounds like an on day.
So pumped up there. Good off season. What is up, everybody? Welcome to the DNVR show.
Let's go.
You know what I'm learning, though? I'm being serious. I think I might be the biggest sicko. That's why. This offseason, I'm still in it,
You
man.
love the slop, is what we're learning.
That doesn't sound as good as the way I tried to
You
phrase
love
for
it.
myself.
You love it.
It's better juxtaposed with your inability to enjoy the title as well. Something's wrong with you, man.
Really tough one for me.
You just
guys.
want to talk about trades and free agency.
I don't
the
want to do
slop.
that. I don't want to do
He's
that.
a national guy.
I want to talk about body language and delivery. That's what I want to talk about, which is what we're going to talk about on today's show. A press conference with the Denver Nuggets brass today. Very interesting one. We got to talk to Josh Kroenke, Calvin Booth, and Michael Malone. That full press conference, which is like 35 minutes, Kale, was it 35? 35 minutes is up on our YouTube channel. So if you want to, after this, you can go and watch it in its entirety. But we're going to break down all the good stuff and how we felt being there. We're also going to look at the new television deal in the NBA is going to change things. So we got a lot to get to today.
Wow.
We are, of course, in the Toyota Lounge, driven by your Front Range Toyota stores. Toyota, the official vehicle of DNVR. Hop in the Toyota chat right now and chat it up with everybody else. Brendan Vogt was with me all day. He's here on the show.
What up, gang? One of the more interesting press conferences. Now, I don't know if that might be more interesting on our side.
I think it might
than
be
the
a little,
audience
yeah,
side. The
maybe.
quotes themselves may not seem so juicy, but you know, one thing we love to do, Adam, is to project.
Yes.
And to conject, and we'll do plenty of those things.
Although I'm going to take some victory laps because there were some things that no longer need projecting.
Oh, is
Can't
that
wait to get
so?
to some of those. Over here, D-Line Co.
Sorry, guys. Not fully over my hangover, which kept me out of yesterday's show.
Two-dayer.
Kept me out of the show and into the bed. I was bedbound yesterday.
You were bedridden?
Yep.
Oh my gosh, man. Well, welcome back to the show. Thank you. Triumphant return. Also, have you watched this press conference?
No.
Have you seen any quotes about it?
I've heard them come through you.
I can't wait. That's perfect because it's nice.
My impression is that it's irritatingly optimistic.
That's it. I don't know if I feel that way, but
Well, I just mean like that was what I got from you.
Oh, I see. But I'm excited though because it's always great. Honestly, Eric is the everyman of the show, and it's great because you are now the audience. You get to kind of react to these in real time, and I'm very curious to see how you react to it. And then, of course, rounding out the show, Harrison Wind.
Do hangovers get worse when you hit 46?
Tell you what, they don't get better.
Okay. Good to know.
It's
I'll
just
keep that in mind.
Regular life gets work, so you might actually be over the hangover, but this is what life feels like, Eric.
Well, if I can impart a little wisdom upon everybody, don't do 5 to 6 Jägermeister shots before the hour of 5 p.m.
Jaeger.
Dude, he took.
I haven't drank Jaeger since high school.
Yeah, me either.
Yeah, we rounded that corner. We did not look back.
Dude.
And also, another piece of life advice, Jägermeister pairs uncomfortably well with Tres Leches cake. Better than you would expect.
Did you
say it's
think
the
it
fourth
would pair
leche.
well?
Yeah.
Was that a pairing you thought would
Well, I didn't think it
well
paired
in
with
your head?
anything, but then we hypothesized later that it was the fourth leche, yes.
Jägermeister pairs well with sleep.
And the fourth and 3 leches.
All right, guys. All right, we're moving on here. The meat of today's show is going to be on these press conferences. We're going to spend segments 2 and 3 on them, so you're going to want to stay tuned. But because first segment's always a little bit shorter, I wanted to use that to talk about something also pertinent to the Nuggets, which is the Western Conference Finals. Michael Malone might have not been watching them, not to spoil the next segment, but we are, and I was honestly itching for this game for a couple reasons. One, I think it's a great matchup, but two, the Wolves looked incredible in the last series. The Nuggets did not look good all playoffs long. We kind of thought like something was up with them, and I just wanted to see what's right here. Is there something to the Wolves, and we're going to see it in the next round? And I got to say, a couple things stood out to me a lot, but my overarching take was the Wolves are a good team. They beat Denver. They're better than Denver this year, to their hat. Man, they did not look impressive. Dallas managed to absorb the on-ball pressure that killed Denver in this series. Non-factor to Dallas at all. And then So that was my first takeaway was the Wolves are a very good team. But boy, did they look a lot more like regular strengths and flaws than they did against Denver when Dallas was able to handle that aspect of it.
Yeah, I had that takeaway as well. And I was sitting there watching that game, and I was thinking, if the Nuggets beat the Timberwolves, I probably would have picked them to beat the Mavs, but I don't know if they would have beaten the Mavs. Because I don't know if the Nuggets had it in them to look, better than they did last round going forward.
Yeah.
I just think that total run out of gas moment Denver had in the second half of Game 7, how they looked out of gas in those first 2 games against Minnesota as well. Dallas looked really good last night, and I just don't know if the Nuggets would have had enough to beat them. I don't.
To me, when I watched it, I was like, see, man, like they're specifically created to beat Denver. And then Dallas has every mid-range shot available to them. They have guys that can make them. Luka and Kyrie can knock down mid-range shots. And as soon as the bigs sink back into drop, it's just like wide open. They just like,
who's a really good mid-range shooter?
Theoretically, Jamal Murray, but Nikola Jokic, but he was bracketed by 2 giant guys down low. Like they actually had all of their defense was set up to slow him down, which he did, and then we didn't have other people that could take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Dallas has ball handlers, so really the Nuggets had just Jamal Murray. And
Yeah.
once he was compromised, they didn't have a ton of ball handlers, which was the real cost of the trade they made to round out their starting lineup to begin with. And it was worth it, but everything has a cost, and I think this was the cost. I also, someone in the chat just put emotional letdown game for the Wolves. Strong agree. Strong agree. You still got to go win game 1 at home. They would say the same thing, but series are long. And so from an outside perspective, just watching how one game plays out, I just thought to myself, yeah, probably hard to bring what you just had in Game 7 to beat the defending champs in their house. So I wasn't too surprised to see them kind of, now they've got to readjust, not just tactically, but mentally to a different challenge. So I'll give them a little bit of benefit of the doubt in terms of like just how this series opened up.
I love the way you put it, because to me, that was the biggest part. It's not even emotional letdown, which almost would be too generous, I think. Because look, it's the Western Conference Finals.
You should be motivated.
You should be
Yeah,
motivated.
yeah.
And I think they were. What I think was different, and when you called the fan base adorable, one of the things that you're trolling a little bit, you're this or that. But one of the things is when you haven't made a run with your team as a fan, you think every series is the same, and there's like degrees of difficulty. Like, are the Mavs as good as the Nuggets? No, therefore it will be easier. The truth is, it's a completely different challenge. They present different problems. And I thought in this game, the Wolves were feeling themselves for their on-ball pressure and their rim protection,
Right.
because those things have won them 2 series in very similar fashion. It was overwhelming. This was a series where that's not going to be the case. They're not going to be able to pressure Kyrie. He's the slipperiest player in the NBA. He has the best ball handler maybe of all time. And Luka's too big for their guys to care about it. And so both of those guys, that on-ball pressure was like, okay, that's going to be a 0 in this series. That's not going to work. So now you have to adjust your talents in another direction. And one other thing from this series that stood out to me so much. Kyrie was incredible in the first quarter in ways that you would expect, the ways that Jamal Murray can be incredible. But in the second half, you stick Anthony Edwards on him. You know what he did? Ran around the court and wore him down. Anthony Edwards has never been as tired as he was in the fourth quarter of that game. There were key possessions where he did not want the ball, nor did he passed half court and put his hands on his knees and stood like this for 20 seconds because he was that tired. And why was he tired? Because he can guard Kyrie Irving. It just cost him everything.
Right.
It didn't cost him anything in the Denver series. He had his cake and ate it too. And to me, it was a very noteworthy difference. You only can do that when you have a secondary ball handler. Luka takes over ball handling duties. What are we going to do with Kyrie? Run him around. They were able to do that, and as a result, Anthony Edwards was out of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge indictment on Jamal Murray and how he looked in that Nuggets series. I think the Nuggets actually thought heading into that series that Jaden McDaniels was going to guard Murray a lot more than he ended up guarding him. They put him on Michael Porter in Game 1 and kind of stuck to that. And I actually feel like that caught Denver a little off guard. I'm sure they thought Anthony Edwards, he would guard Murray a lot, but not as much as he did. But he was on Murray, and he had enough energy to shut him down and win a couple games in that series for
Right.
Minnesota on the other end.
It should have been exhausting for him too.
Should have been. Wasn't.
Also, that did come up in the press conference. Not that specifically, but more or less the things that could have been done to sort of attack that ball pressure or make the ball pressure come at a cost for Minnesota that maybe Murray and the Nuggets didn't do.
Like Edwards should not have been able to do that against Denver. He should not have been able to take Murray out of the series like he did and also score 40 points in 2 games.
You got to make a guy choose which one they're going to be. And look,
he's not going to be able to do that against Dallas, it seems like.
Great players can do that, a game here, a game there. Like even Jokic in Game 5. But what was so impressive was he made all the shots, but he also played defense incredibly well.
Yeah.
He can do that, but can he do it for Games 5, 6, and 7? He clearly couldn't at those points, and that's it. But I will say that one thing from watching that game, and let's let the series play out. It's one game. Things change. Right. We don't want to jump to conclusions
We've seen narratives
here.
change quickly.
And that game was razor thin. It could have gone either way. But one thing that does seem obvious, and I was thinking about the bubble run. I was thinking of runs of years past. Bruce Brown, secondary ball handler. Bubble run, you have Monte Morris, PJ Dozier, and Gary Harris, all guys that were able to at least play a little bit of relief and handle the ball. And I look at that and I go, it really is, I think, a huge factor for Jamal that you have to be able to give him another guy to take the ball out of his hands. And he's probably going to have to get better as an off-ball guy because he does that with the second unit and he sometimes just stands in the corner and doesn't do anything. I think that it's like, no, that's a skill, man. Being able to be an off-ball and make an impact is actually something that Murray can make a very tangible improvement on.
And, Denver's second and third best player, Denver's second and third highest players are both on max contracts. And so it feels like sometimes they should be held to the same standards. They're not. Like, in terms of what's expected of Murray and what he's capable of, it's more than indifferent from Porter. So, D-Line rightfully predicted that they actually ended up putting Jaden McDaniels on MPJ and not on Murray. That is something that happened because MPJ was so damn good in the Lakers series. As bad as Porter
was so damn bad.
And as bad as Porter was in the Minnesota series, Murray has to make them pay for that. Now, I know Anthony Edwards is a great on-ball defender, but some of the things we talked about, that should have just meant it was easier for them to get into their pick and roll. They had more space to work with. Obviously, Porter is not infallible here or without criticism. So but it is interesting how that one small adjustment was something you really thought maybe across the course of 7 games, Denver would be able to force them to get out of that, right? Like if Murray had played well enough, maybe they would have gone, it needs to be Jaden McDaniels. And that never happened. Credit to Anthony Edwards, but also maybe something to look at in the offseason for Murray.
Yeah. I mean, the crazy thing is that Minnesota built to shut down what Denver does the best, which is play through Nikola Jokic, and on the offensive end, more than anything, Jokic was getting rid of the ball right away. Like he'd get doubled, he'd pass the ball off, get doubled, pass the ball off. If he tried to drive in, more often than not, it was getting knocked away from him. And so the safety valve of being able to pass it out to a Michael Porter Jr. or then an Aaron Gordon, because the dunker spot is then also compromised since you have either Cat or Gobert just hanging around in that area. And then our guys just couldn't knock shots down. So they know how to beat it, but it's okay, you have to hit this shot, and they don't. And you're like, well, fuck. I don't know what to do here.
I'm also D-line on the matchup part too. The Wolves, it can be kind of one or the other sometimes, and it doesn't have to be. Tim Connolly built the Wolves to be a good basketball team, and they very clearly were by their regular season record, who they just beat where they are now. I also think we don't have to pretend otherwise. That team absolutely was built with having to play Denver in mind. There is no doubt about it. And matchups are a little different. And this is kind of one of the things the NBA was hoping. This is one thing that's manifesting from the NBA's quest for parity.
Yay,
by the way,
parity.
is that these matchups might be a little bit more. It used to just be if you have a big 3 or whatever, you could break through it.
Hot take, I think it's always been this way, and it's an underrated part of storytelling in the NBA that those get lost. Because look, the victor tells the story.
Sure.
I think it's always been this thing of who you play and who you avoided has these bigger. Everybody remembers Dirk Nowitzki losing the 1-8 matchup, right? That just happened to be the perfect 1-8 matchup for that era. It wasn't even like they were that great of a team. They shot an enormous amount of threes. Dallas had a bad center to play 2 clunky bigs. Sometimes that's how the way it works. That being said, I do agree with you. This Wolves team is designed to beat Denver more so than they're designed to beat Dallas.
Right.
And that's why the series might actually get pretty interesting.
It's true.
And watching Dallas. The last thing I'll say on this is, and we've danced around it, it was very clear watching that the Dallas Mavericks are a 2-headed monster, not a 1-headed. Luka's their best player. He's the MVP candidate. But Kyrie on any given night, on any given series, and in any given possession is the best player on the court. And he was in the first half, and Luka was in the second half. And it kind of shows you what happened in that game, in my opinion. What happened in that game was Kyrie beat them so bad at the strategy they have, and you tilt things a little bit more into, okay, let's contain Kyrie a little bit more, and then Luka bludgeons you over the head in the second half. And that's how basketball has to work. You can't stop everything. You've always got to pick your poison. And Dallas made them pick poison significantly more than Denver was able to at any point in that series. And unfortunately for Denver, but it stood out as a stark contrast.
Yeah, a lot of Kyle Anderson in the first half. Bro was lighting it up from the floater range.
Actually, this is the real takeaway, Harrison. Jaden
Lighting
McDaniels
it
was
up.
6 of 9 from 3,
Yeah.
and Kyle Anderson played the best playoff game of his career, and they lost.
Right. Well, Edwards had
a bad game, yeah.
A game reminiscent of the times when Denver was able to take him out of those couple games in that series.
Well, that is one other note I actually have, not to get into the weeds, because I know people don't like to go this deep. It'll be my last point, but rather than double team the way Denver did, Denver double teamed Anthony Edwards, right? They threw guys at him. They tried to be clever about the timing of it. Dallas didn't. Dallas trusted, one, they can contain, that they had rim protection behind him in Gafford and Lively, and then they just helped off shooters a lot. So part of this is Jaden McDaniels hits 9 threes. He got 9 threes, in part because they were daring him to take them. Kyle Anderson daring him to take. But they basically were Denver a trap. You're playing 4-on-3 behind it. They basically were saying, if you beat your on-ball defender, we're in the lanes with a secondary line of defense, and the third line of defense, which is rim protection, is also there. He would have had to beat 3 lines of defense to get to the basket. That's different than what Denver did, and it was why they were able to kind of shut off both things, Anthony Edwards and everything else. So interesting adjustment, interesting difference between the two teams, at least in that matchup. It's going to be a good series, though. Are you guys into it?
Might be a sweep.
Kind of.
Might be a sweep.
Might
I
be
had,
a sweep.
I had a hard time watching it. I had a harder time than I thought I would.
It
the
is
game was
sad.
great. The game was great.
Yeah.
I just had a hard time. I'm in a different place than you guys on in terms of what was possible if they had simply gotten over that hump.
Oh,
because
they
I
were
also
gonna
think
win.
this matchup thing swings both ways. Jokic would then be trying to score on Derek Lively.
I know
and
that's the
Daniel
thing.
Gafford for
There's
7
no one
games.
else in the playoffs that had anything to offer
So
Nikola Jokic.
I
I
was
know.
just a
He
little
he
bummed.
went to Anthony Davis and Rudy Gobert, then would have gone to Gafford, and Horford.
But it wasn't Rudy Gobert. It was Rudy Gobert and Cat
And Cat,
and
yeah,
Naz Reid
sure.
and Anthony Edwards.
Sure.
And anybody else that was around would just like clomb onto to Jokic.
To Daniel Gafford, who he once had, what did he shoot, 18 of 20 from the field or something?
That's the thing, man. We were oh my god, we were a quarter and a half away from it all, boys.
And I also just want to reiterate that saying that Minnesota was built to beat Denver doesn't mean that Denver never had a chance. Like they still,
Right.
that's what teams should do after you win a title. And then Denver needed to respond and beat them, and they didn't.
They were a quarter and a half away. They were up 20 in the third.
It's not an excuse. It's not sugarcoating. I just think it's what
It's
happened.
it's
I
the
just think
truth. It's what happened.
It honestly is weirdly reminiscent of the 2018 Rockets and the 2018 Warriors, where it was like, are the Warriors the better team? I think everybody would say yes. They had Kevin Durant that year and all this stuff. But the Rockets were like, we built a team where you switch 1 through 5 and it throws everything off and we spread you out and we shoot a bunch of threes so the variance is up. And you know what? Almost worked. Just like
I know,
the
but
Nuggets,
it's like,
almost worked.
it's funny. It's like everywhere else in all of the NBA, it's the proclamation that the big man is dead is something that rings true because everybody else just shoots. But like Denver and Minnesota and 76ers, like guys that are big man focused, like Denver is very big man focused, obviously. So Minnesota made themselves big man focused, but then they run into teams that are not big man focused, and then they just shoot them to death on the outside, and you realize like how invaluable it is to have rim protection if you don't have teams that are constantly going to the rim. I don't know, whatever.
It's like paper, rock, scissors.
It is
in
rock,
there.
paper. Yeah, paper, rock. It's like rock. Who was that? Yeah,
was me.
K. Adams.
It's regional.
No, it's not. Unless you want to say
regional.
Rochambeau. It's rock, paper, scissors. And yes,
It's also paper, rock, scissors.
the Minnesota Timberwolves went heavy on rock.
Yeah.
And like now they're getting papered.
All right. Well, let's take a break. That's enough about talking about other teams. Let's talk about your Denver Nuggets. For the next 2 segments, we're going to be breaking down what I think was a supremely fascinating press conference between the brass at the Denver Nuggets. We'll talk about that on the other side.
Stay tuned.
We are here in the Toyota Lounge. Toyota is the official vehicle of DNVR, and they've got something for everybody. Cars, trucks,
Okay.
SUVs, whatever you want, Toyota has it. They offer 17 models with available all-wheel drive, or four-wheel drive, like the Epic 4Runner, Toyota, they also offer more low and zero emission vehicles combined than any other automaker to give customers numerous choices to reduce their carbon footprint. 16 different hybrid vehicles to choose from in the Toyota fleet, like the iForce Max hybrid truck, SUVs, cars, trucks, Land Cruiser. They got the 2024 Land Cruiser coming this spring, the 2024 Tacoma. That's available as well now. Trucks are their DNA, but they have everything for everybody. You can visit your Front Range Toyota stores at a location near you. AutoNation Toyota, Arapahoe and Centennial, Corwin Toyota in Boulder, Groove Toyota in Littleton, Mountain States Toyota in Denver, Stevenson Toyota East in Aurora, and Stevenson Toyota West in Lakewood. Toyota is a proud partner of the Denver Nuggets. It's the official vehicle of DNVR.
Circa Resort and Casino is Vegas's first ever adults-only casino. They're not checking IDs at their bar. They're checking them at the door. If you're not of age, you're not getting in.
Get the freak out,
Let's keep it real,
Timmy.
This is Vegas. Adults only, baby. That's how it works at Circa Resort and Casino. They also have Circa Stadium Swim, which is a pretty ripping place to watch your favorite games, teams, and bets play out. I'm talking a massive screen at a 4,000 person pool with some tasty, sweet alcoholic treats.
4,000 person pool.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people to watch
lot of people.
the
God
Timberwolves
damn.
get swept, man.
It's a huge pool.
Imagine taking the plunge into a 4,000 person pool.
Well, I don't know if there's
Why
necessarily
imagine? It's
4,000 people there at any point in time.
Yeah, but it could be.
It could, if you wanted to bring 3,999 friends, you could.
Damn.
That's what I'm trying to get. Experience Stadium Swim and watch your favorite teams at Circa Resort and Casino. How about this? If you book your stay with code DNVR20, you can also get 20% off. So go check out our home away from home,
yeah.
our home in the desert. You're going to Vegas, you need to go to Circa Resort and Casino.
Dude, my previous home in the desert was just a hole I dug.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is so much
Climbed
better.
out of it, though, but yeah.
So much better.
All right, back here, segment 2 of the DNVR Nuggets podcast. Guys, it happened today, kind of an exit interview. I think a slightly unique, I mean, Harrison, when we were talking about this, is it unique to have all three, the owner, the GM, and the coach there together? It may have happened before in the past, so I don't think it's like that weird. But there is something that is weird inherently about having those three people together in one press conference, because it is inherent. Like we talked in the last few days about everybody being aligned. Is there alignment from star to player and everything
It's the
else?
word of the day.
It's the word of the
Alignment.
They've heard it.
They've definitely heard it.
They've heard it.
And there's even a chance that coming out here and doing this, that was part of it, is, hey, let's show alignment.
Yeah.
But one of the very first things that was said, I thought was so interesting, Calvin Booth says, we talked a lot about this upstairs. The GM front office job a lot of times is to make sure that the long-term view is something that we're half satisfied with, the long-term view. And the coach is down in the trenches trying to win every night. A lot of times those things are aligned, and sometimes those things drift away from each other. To me, this was such a great table setting, because if you say like, "Oh, we're clearly in alignment," it's like, come on, guys, we're not in alignment.
Right.
Oh, no, we're not.
So it's not natural to expect that, and I think that articulation of the front office's job is to make things stable for as long as possible, and the coach's job is to win in that moment all the time. It's inherent that they're in conflict. So I almost liked that you set the table there, because it was kind of a table setting for what this whole thing was about.
Am I down in the trenches and you're having the long view? Is that the dynamic here? Of course.
Who's in the trenches? Yeah.
I think I'm in the trenches.
I definitely have the longest view.
The longest view, for sure.
With the I've got the longest tooth, so I've got the longest.
I don't have
view.
much of a view.
Yeah, for sure.
No,
24 hours at
it
a
was a
time.
good table setter from Calvin Booth, and look, that's the reality. And we've been hinting at it like all season, and we hinted at it throughout the playoffs. And after the Nuggets lost, Calvin Booth and Michael Malone were not very aligned this season. They just weren't. Calvin Booth wanted to play the full roster. He wanted to kind of conserve everybody for the playoffs. And Michael Malone, as most coaches would think, and most coaches would have the same philosophy, he's going out there and just trying to win every single game. Yeah. No surprise, that's how both those guys thought. That's how most GMs and most coaches would think, but that was the case with them this season. And you heard it with that quote, and today they kind of just came out and said, maybe we weren't aligned last season, but I did have some hope, and I did come away with some hope today that they will be more aligned next year.
Calvin also did a good job, I thought, today of reiterating his vision, whether you agree with it or not. He's been very clear at this, but I'm glad he put it on paper again. He says a couple of years ago, we changed over the roster. We had to get bigger and get more skilled. But in today's marketplace, when you build a team, there's only two options. There's only two options. You either get veteran players and they last 1 year, and then you got to find new veteran players, and you do that every single year, or you find a bunch of young players, you suffer through a short period where you transition them to NBA ready, and then you're ready to go for years to come. And he said, we value continuity so much that he said something like, I believe with my whole heart that the second one is the way to go, and that's why we built the roster. So I say that to say, there's no ambiguity in my mind about what has been publicly said by Calvin Booth about what he thinks the next several years look like. They look like a pipeline of players that have to get up to snuff, and everything the team does is going to have to be with the concession of we need those guys to become our guys in short order, and starting with this year, but especially next year.
And even explicitly, what's the biggest change that needs to happen? What was Booth's first answer? I just think our young guys need more seasoning.
Yeah.
So he's not deviating from the plan, which again goes back to sort of what we tried to articulate, which is that he was prepared for this, not hoping for it, not punting on the year, just understood that this particular year would be tough because the philosophy was not going to necessarily pay dividends right away. And so it was going to look strained if they came up short. So I do think he doubled down on it. I think it's very clear. I think really the conversation is about mostly some of the stuff that Wynn's outlined, which is how willing is Malone to kind of handle the rotation differently throughout the regular season, knowing we might lose this game tonight. And is that worth it to us?
Right.
And so that's, I like that Malone has the perspective that he has. You know, I think it's good that the coach wants to win every game. I like that Malone wanted to go back to back so badly and so desperately, but it did seem like he was in a reflective place about maybe what needs to change so that you can marry these two visions and get the best of both worlds.
I'm glad you said it this way because I'm with you as well. The more I think about this, I all year have been thinking about this dynamic. I don't think there's a right or wrong. I think there is tension that is necessary and finds harmony, and then it's perfect. It's like, oh, you have the long vision, you have the short vision, and you come together and all bases are covered. There's something harmonious about that when it's executed perfectly. But when it's not, it actually becomes the worst thing, and then it becomes perfect chaos where two things are being pulled in the wrong direction. So to me, that's why I like to phrase it this way. This is an inherent conflict. There's no escaping this.
Right.
It is a conflict that happens, and maybe Denver didn't handle it very well this year, but next year they have to handle it better, not go away from it. They just have to handle it better.
Yeah, I'm just looking I mean, if you ever watched Moneyball and you see what Billy Beane was the conflict he had with his manager, that was this exact same thing. The guy had veterans that he wanted to play, and Billy Beane ended up just trading them away so he couldn't. So he was forced to play this new interesting way. Yeah, right. So I get it.
It's kind of a universal sports conflict, honestly.
But I don't know what Malone was supposed to do differently this year. I don't know that if he played, if more minutes were given to, say, Peyton Watson or...
I don't think it's just minutes, though. This is the thing I'm glad you brought it up. It's not just minutes. It's the fact that those guys didn't play with good lineups. And so their roles in those lineups are also different, and those minutes are different. To me, that it's less about the one thing. It's more about, hey, you might have to sacrifice this to get those guys in different roles. Playing with Jokic, Peyton Watson can play off Jokic. He's a good cutter. He's a good pick and roll defender. Yeah, but that's different than playing with Reggie, where it's am I a spot up shooter now?
But in the playoffs, would they have opted to play Peyton Watson with Nikola Jokic?
100%. He should be. He's actually brought in
favor of who?
Aaron Gordon. That allows you to put Aaron Gordon on the second unit and not have to play him 45 minutes. He is the secondary rim protector. It's a different type. It's more of a stretch four, but it's still the exact same role: rim protection from a wing defender.
Yeah, I don't know. I just in watching the season the entire time, it's I never felt myself being we got to get more minutes for XO, or we're playing this guy too much, or like, to me, it was just more the way that it fell apart. It's like really easy now to look at it and be like, man, the whole thing was wrong, completely wrong. We did everything wrong because they lost. So you have to look at it like, well, where'd it fall apart? But I still just look at that specific series as to where things fell. Like, we almost did have cake and eat it too. Like, we almost had if we got through that last game to where we are naturally bringing along young guys, not forcing them into the lineup to where we're potentially punting games, and we're able to sort of like get over. It's just, to me, it was like so close to working. It's just that last game is where everything came to a head. And maybe that is, you can say like, but I think that even in that time, like, he could have gone to Peyton Watson. He could have gone more to Christian Brown. He could have gone to other guys, but he just didn't trust anybody. And I don't even know if playing 20 more games with Peyton Watson would have gotten there.
But it also reminds me of, but that's sports, right? Like, you know that more than anyone on this panel. I agree with you about that point. But also, it's just, then sports are what happens when you didn't win the game that you could have won and you were just right there.
Totally.
And then you have all these conversations, and
of course,
the point you brought up about going away from it. Now, it does remind me a little bit of like electing a new president every term or something, where you're like, hey, it was an 8-year plan.
Totally.
And it didn't materialize in 4 years. And I don't know if we should just try something new altogether now. Like, the idea was it was going to take a bit of time. So it does, but Calvin and Malone, I just think being on the same page as best they can, is a good sign, or is something that needs to happen. And so one of the things I liked about this press conference was almost the way they kind of had that conversation in front of us, candidly. You know, more on their sleeves. It was a bit of like a, hey, we hear the noise about this one thing. We understand it's being talked about, and I felt like it was kind of addressed and borne out in the open.
One thing, though, to talk about this dynamic, if I were to ask you, what does it look like when the Nuggets take Aaron Gordon out and put Peyton Watson at power forward? What does it look like to you?
At power forward?
Yeah.
I mean,
or just as a stretch forward, we play like more wingy lineups, you know?
Well, I mean, I think it like takes a big hit on offense, and it maybe
does?
looks probably Aaron Gordon versus Peyton Watson. Let's
say you have Michael Porter, KCP Murray, and Peyton Watson, a lineup like that, just for an example.
I mean, it's the same thing. I don't know. I think it takes a hit on offense because there's one guy you can count on even less, and then defensively you have maybe a little bit better rim protector, but you have a lot less trust.
My point is, we don't know because we didn't see it this year, and that's the point. It's not necessarily just minutes. What we did see an enormous amount of was Reggie Jackson, Jamal Murray, Zeke Naji, Christian Brown, and Peyton. Like, we saw that lineup at 1,000, 1,500 minutes. That lineup was never going to play in the playoffs, but we saw a lot of it. And that's my point, is it's not just about the minutes. It's where do those minutes come from? Where do those reps come from? How versatile is your roster? How does it look? And you're right that we almost had our cake and ate it too. But there is another part of this, which is what was built now that translates to next year. And that's the part that I think you look at and you go, man, it's a little scary because I don't know. Next year, there might be a scenario where they have to play that, and we don't even know what it looks like.
Yeah, but to me, it's like next year, it's like, all right, rookies, you're playing. Now you're second-year players. Now you're going to play. Third-year players, you're definitely going to play. One of you might even slot into the starting lineup. Then you have a more defined second unit of guys that you're like, all right, they're seasoned. They're not going to get overwhelmed. They're not literal rookies anymore. So to me, it's like the plan was in place. It's just we were a fucking quarter and a half away from it being perfect.
Any other thoughts on this specific topic, Wind?
Oh, I have a lot of thoughts on this specific topic.
Oh, all right. Well, why don't you chime in?
Look, if Michael Malone has the same thought process when it comes to his bench again next season, it's going to be another disaster. Because coming off the bench next year, it's going to be Peyton Watson, Julian Strother, Vlatko Čančar, Jalen Pickett.
Sounds pretty good to me. I don't know.
It's going to be terrible. Are you kidding? Next to Jamal Murray, maybe staggering. The bottom line is he's got to mix and match more, like every other team does. That's how you make your bench better during the regular season, and also help prepare them for the playoffs because they're used to playing with those guys more. And maybe your starting lineup takes a little bit of a hit, but I think that's okay if it means your bench is better.
Yeah. That's the broader point. Is like, so if your plan is to both develop some of these guys and be as versatile as you can, then you got to test that out in the regular season. But
You
it is
can't
going
play
to,
4 bench guys and 1 starter.
no other team does it to the degree Denver does. Denver does it
Especially
like
when
3 times.
these are
as
the
much as
guys
any
you
other
have coming
team.
off your bench. Didn't work this year. It's not going to work next year. I guarantee you.
Yeah. Any other notes? Should we take a break? And on the other side, we have a lot more notes to get to on this stuff. So let's take a break. On the other side, the most interesting answer, though, we actually have the 2-minute clip to play. The most interesting answer to me was about how they handled this season with regards to post-All-Star break, pushing the guys. That, to me, was by far the most interesting based on what Malone said in 2 directions.
Miller Lite, check it out. The best light beer out there. The only light beer I like. It's Miller Lite. 96 calories per 12 ounces. Great tasting. Doesn't fill you up. You can drink a bunch of them in any occasion. Watching an NBA playoff game. NHL playoffs going on right now. Just hanging out with some buddies. Miller Lite. Great tasting. A lot's changed over the years. One thing that hasn't is the great taste of Miller Lite. The original light beer, and it's still the best one to this day. Miller Lite has more of what you want and less stuff that you don't. They keep it simple, undebatable quality, great taste, only 96 calories. It's the beer that strips away everything you don't need and holds on to what matters most. The original light beer since 1975. Less filling, only 96 calories. I would love one right now. Light beer that tastes like beer. A lot of those other light beers out there, they taste like water. They don't taste like beer. That's not the case with Miller Lite. Times change, but you can always enjoy the great taste of Miller Lite. Tastes like Miller time. To get Miller Lite delivered right to your door, visit MillerLite.com/DNVR, or you can find it pretty much anywhere that sells beer. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories per 12 ounces.
The sun is out. The sun is shining here in our great, beautiful state of Colorado. You might be feeling the itch to get outside. Go recreate. And I'm not talking about the recreation Colorado's famous for. No, I'm talking about going outside and playing, using your body, you know what I mean? Volo Sports has the Volo Pass, which is a premier monthly membership program that gives members unlimited access to sports, events, and social activities every night of the week. I strongly recommend this for diehards or folks that have recently moved to a new neighborhood. Maybe some of your friends have moved away. Whatever it is, man, you're looking to get out there, open up that social circle. Volo is the best way to meet new people, get active, and play games in the city. It's only $20 a month. Proceeds also go to help out their Volo Kids Foundation.
That's cool.
And all you have to do is just hang out with friends, play sports. Some of these sports include holding a beer in your hand while you play. What a treat.
And a lot of them come here to the bar afterwards.
They do.
Cool thing.
So it's a cool thing. You can be a part of it. Sign up on the Volo app using code DNVR3. That's DNVR3 to get Volo Pass for only $10 a month for the first 3 months.
All right, back here, segment 3. We're in the Toyota Lounge. Hop in the Toyota chat. Let us know what you're thinking here. What happened?
Hop in.
There's one guy who hops in the comment section once every 2 shows, Larry, and all he says is,
Larry,
slip your shoes off, fellas. He says it every time.
Hell yeah.
I just don't know if it's a joke for him.
You know
I think he's like clowning us for being too casual.
Too casual?
Oh.
I can't tell.
or
I don't
he's
know.
dead serious and wants to see your feet.
He's casually encouraging more casual.
Probably that part.
Yeah.
There's 3 things that I think were the most interesting part, and I want to hit all 3 of them in this segment. Talked about Jamal Murray. We're going to get to that in a little bit. But before we do, we have a clip. And the clip is, I asked Michael Malone, everybody said after the All-Star break, the 1 seed is not the highest priority. There is currently a 6 seed, a 5 seed, and a 3 seed in the conference finals. There's only one top 2 seed left in the NBA. It's the Boston Celtics. The other 2 seeds and 1 seed is out. So I asked, would you evaluate the job you did at that? And here's what he had to say.
Well, we see the first question. I think it speaks to the parity in the NBA. I think it speaks to the quality of depth in the Western Conference, especially. And we're the only team to make the playoffs 6 years in a row. No one's even close to that. And for the number 1 seed, the number 2 seed to be out watching the Western Conference Finals, I'm not watching, but it speaks to the parity and the excellence across the board. Dallas at the trade deadline, they went all in. I mean, they traded picks, they traded players to get PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford. And then you have a team in Minnesota that we knew who they were last year. We beat them 4-1 in the first round, and a lot of us felt that that might have been the toughest series that we played. And we knew Nas Reed and Jaden McDaniels did not play in that series. So all I can say, Adam, on that front is I think the Western Conference is a deep, deep, deep conference, and parity is alive and well. How do we handle the conflict of the postseason push after the All-Star break? Well, on one hand, we got the 2 seed. And on the other hand, I'm watching our players play in Game 7 the second half, and our guys look dead tired. They did. And I think you guys probably saw the same thing. So did I run our players into the ground? I'm sure that's definitely part of it. Much was asked of Jamal, KCP, Michael, Aaron, and Nicola especially. And we were not afforded the opportunity like we were last year to rest players down the stretch. This was a different season. And that was a decision we made, and we live with it.
All right, lots of interesting stuff here. First of all, you're a visual guy. This was a hilarious presser in one way, that you have the owner, Josh Kroenke, in the middle.
And
also you had the Russian Nestedov, tall to small. But you have the owner in the middle, and then you have the 2 sides on each side. And it almost had a little bit of a feeling to me. Maybe you saw stuff like, dad with each kid on the side, and it's like, all right, so tell me what happened. And, you tell me what happened, and they both have to sort of answer. Did you is it a funny layout?
I mean, I didn't pick up on that because I didn't hear the rest of what they were talking about. I just saw the tall to quite small.
Yeah.
And I also noticed that Josh Kroenke got rid of his very large beard.
Well, maybe he saw the show and you called him out. Said,
The
what you call
speed
him?
bump.
A goal? Yeah, speed bump. Yeah,
Speed bump.
Man, it turns out D-Line's got a lot of juice.
He's got a lot of juice, man. He's
Turns out, man.
billionaires. Here's the thing so let's break down this quote. Okay. First of all, so he's asked about did they push too hard. First of all, goes out of his way to say Dallas at the deadline, they made a trade. They went all in. They didn't make no moves at the deadline. That's a team that pushed their chips in. They traded picks. They traded players. They did things to try to win. Not lost that was how he set the table for this answer.
I kind of wish he just turned and stared down Calvin Booth when he said that, too.
May as well.
They got Daniel Gafford, PJ Washington.
So
he was been pretty
guys.
good in these playoffs.
2 backup 5s.
Back up. That would have been the only thing left. Is if he was like, so give him a chance to spell some of their key players, give him a break. But then at the end, he says, on the one hand, we get the 2 seed, and on the other hand, we're watching our players in the second half of Game 7, and they're dead tired. First of all, take a victory lap. So many people hopped in my mentions and hopped in the mentions of the show saying, they weren't tired. You guys are just making excuses. They weren't tired. They played
People
3
said
days
that?
ago. People think that I made up the narrative about the Nuggets being tired down the stretch of the whole season and all this and that. I was
They
like,
didn't
guys,
notice that suddenly Jokic couldn't get a single rebound.
they
in
were
this game?
very tired in that game. But he says, did we push too hard? And he kind of almost concedes it, in my opinion, as I'm watching it. But at the same time, he is saying it was a catch-22.
Sure. That's, they were very close to threading that needle. Very close to threading that needle. And I don't think it's unimportant to get the home court advantage. I mean, we all were cheering for it. We wanted that.
Fans are never... We talk about... We're less patient than Michael Malone is.
Right.
We hate a losing streak.
Yeah, but especially when you play in the city of Denver, Colorado, you want to get home court advantage because
Didn't really matter
theoretically it should be baked in. But the crazy thing is they lost almost every game here, which is wild.
Home court disadvantage was strong.
It's so wild. But I mean, yeah, I get it. That is part of the short view, long view of okay. And I'm certain that the front office weren't saying we got to rest our guys. What are we doing? Why are we trying to get this? It's now with the benefit of hindsight. I mean, you're like, well, man, that sucked. Those guys were really goddamn tired.
I mean, I would disagree with that. I know the front office wanted to rest guys a lot more than the Nuggets ultimately did. I mean, I just think back to that one of the last back-to-backs the Nuggets played. I think it was at Utah and then versus Minnesota late in the season. Did you guys remember this? Jamal Murray, was just recovering, I think, from the injury that put him out for that last chunk of the season, and then he came back, and then he plays at Utah, and then he's pleading with Michael Malone on the plane to let him play the next night in Minnesota, and he does. And I had heard like behind the scenes, the Nuggets were like, wait, what's going on here? Like, why is he playing? But I actually think if the front office did have their way, like they would not have gone as hard as they did for the 1 seed.
Interesting.
But in the end, it's kind of up to the players. It always is. That's what I tell everybody. If the players want to play, they play.
Right. And, don't forget in that scenario, like Jamal Murray has to get back into shape too.
Right.
Like in what better way?
But was playing a back-to-back really the best way to do that?
With travel, too. It was a travel back-to-back. Here's the other thing that I thought was interesting from Malone on the same vein, because it was asked about what, was the season a success? Is it a failure, this or that? And I was surprised to him say, I know a lot of guys will think that. I don't think that. I think this was a successful season, which I kind of hated.
I didn't like that. Keep the same energy. I didn't love the Giannis answer.
Yeah.
Didn't love that one.
Didn't love it because I'm like, you have Jokic in his apex prime, and you have a roster that's great. Like, Denver is in a zero-sum game right now. You either win or don't.
Yeah.
We're not going to look back at this and be like, man, there was a lot of successful seasons where they almost did it. It's like, nope, they had that one where they got over the hump, and we're going to count them. But then he went on to list the accolades. There were so many positives. Franchise record, 57 wins. Second best home record in the NBA. Second best road record in franchise history. And to be one of 3 teams to finish top 8 of offensive and defensive efficiency and number 2 in the clutch. That is a lot of accolades, but they sound so funny right now.
It also, man, sounded a bit like, when Shams tweets about like a coaching hire and you can tell when the agent sent a following paragraph. I was like, bro, am I supposed to lobby for your job right now? You just got an extension. It did feel a little bit of, he's like, here's why this season went well. And I'm like, yeah, man, but like we know that you guys are good.
Right.
It's not really the question. But I do also understand a little bit of maybe the general kind of like how hard it would be human nature wise to not push back on all of this, like, and you did this wrong and you did this wrong and you did that wrong. And it's like, man, we lost a game.
Yeah.
We're there every year. We won last year, and we have to come to terms with the fact that we came up short. But again, like for Malone, I think it's always going to be a bit like, could we have just found a way to win the game in front of us, and less about we should have done this differently all the way back to blah 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 blah. So watching him kind of, I think, be uncomfortable in the nature of the questions and the conversations today was just kind of interesting for me.
Another thing that I thought was interesting was, and this was Josh Kroenke's point, this team was built before the latest CBA. The new rules were not a thought when they signed Michael Porter to a max contract, when they signed Jamal Murray to a max contract. Those things were not considered because they didn't exist yet. And so the reality for the Nuggets is that they made a plan, the rules change, and they have to change their plan. And I think today was an admission of that, of like, yeah, we were hoping we would just keep everything the same and then add this.
Yeah.
But now that the ground under us has shifted, we do have to make some compromises.
And with that, they did not close the door on Kentavious Caldwell-Pope coming back.
Yep.
If he declines his player option like we all expect him to do by June 29th, I think that's the deadline on it. Both Calvin and Josh Kroenke were like kind of insinuating that maybe under the right circumstances, if it really made sense, they would go into the second apron to bring KCP back. They didn't like say 100% with a bullet, we're going to give him as much money as he wants.
Right.
We're going to have our payroll as high as we need it to bring him back. But they didn't close the door. They weren't like, no, we're not going into the second apron. And look, there are a lot of limitations on that. You can't make certain trades. You don't have access to any exceptions. A lot of stuff comes with the second apron. But the door isn't closed completely on KCP coming back.
It seems like there is conceivably a number that working with or under they would do it. Like they're in
Potentially.
So I thought that was interesting.
And then also, D-line, they were asked about Christian Brown, both Michael Malone and Calvin Booth, about is he a starter? And both of them had more or less the same answer. Michael Malone put it, I think, more succinctly. He said, if you're going to be a shooting guard in this league, you have to shoot.
Right.
Christian does everything that you need. His defense is phenomenal, but he's got to make improvements as a shooter. Calvin said more or less the same thing. But neither guy just came out and said, I will say Calvin was more emphatic. He said, if you watched what he did this year and thinks you can't be a smart starter, I don't know what to tell you. And Michael Malone was more, if he can get to 38% as a three-point shooter, then yes.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, that was one of, again, the big failings that the Nuggets had, was that
Making
outside shooters weren't making shots. Ironically, except for Christian Brown, who was actually like shooting pretty well in the playoffs. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can see that not being their top plan, but in a pinch, like, why not?
Well, let me ask you this, because the whole like KCP in my mind, it was gone just because it just seems like it. But maybe he's not. If KCP was back and there's no other major moves that are made, you trade Z, maybe you do this or that. You kind of move some things around, but it's like, all right, we know the guys who are coming in, even Jalen, Julian, Hunter, like that's the pipeline of players. But KCP's back, Nuggets winning it next year. They're winning it. That's how I feel. If he's gone, I just don't know, because that's where things get a little dicey.
Exactly. I mean, that's where you enter the chaos factor. You just don't know.
Could be horrible.
Yeah, if we're just talking about just simply contracting and not adding any players that are equal to or better than KCP, right, that sounds bad.
Yeah. I'm the biggest Christian Brown fan in the world. I'm pretty nervous about him stepping into the starting lineup. I'm pretty nervous about it. In the KCP role.
To the shooting?
As a shooting guard.
Yeah.
Because I'm a little worried about the Nuggets offense in that scenario. I really am.
And we brought that up too. Like, if KCP leaves, it's Christian Brown, who, by the way, did make strides as a shooter in year 2. Just there are levels of being left open, higher volume, all this stuff.
Yeah.
So, man, I lost my point. Brutal, just brutal.
KCP, Christian
Go to
Brown
someone else.
shooting.
Brown.
Oh, they're both right. They were both right. That's the thing. Like, so Calvin Booth has this. This is again a reflective of their perspectives and how their jobs are different. Calvin Booth sees long term. Could you see Christian Brown growing into a starter in the NBA? Hell yes, of course.
Right.
Michael Malone sees next year and how it's different without KCP
Yeah.
and the next game he has to play.
Great point.
And so, and I just remembered my other point. If you lose KCP and it's Christian Brown and Aaron Gordon in the lineup together, it's two guys. Maybe the defense doesn't feel like they have to lose their minds over being open. And then you're like, okay, now if a guy like Porter were to be traded or leaves, like the space, I think it's very easy to underestimate the spacing that Denver was able to put together around their pick and roll, and how quickly that can change with just a couple domino pieces.
Like, if that happens, do the Nuggets just look to get Corey Kispert or something like that?
Yeah.
Just a shooter
just
to
a
slot
shooter,
in there.
just something.
You know what's funny though, man? You look at Dallas. They play the most spread you out offense there is. They got Josh Green on the court. They got Derek White. And you know what they have those guys do? Shoot 9 threes, because that's the game. And they're like, Derek White's not really a better shooter than Christian Brown.
Yeah,
Or-
he is.
I'm sorry, not Derek. Derek White is. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was
I'm
gonna
sorry.
say.
I'm sorry. I know. Derek Jones. Derek Jones. Sorry, Derek Jones. I don't know why I was having a hard time
Derek
here.
Jones is a definitely worse shooter than Christian Brown.
And this is my point: is
Right.
Dallas will put him in the corner and just tell him shoot it, and they'll just run plays where they shoot it. And
Same with Josh Green.
And I feel like Denver's almost reluctant a little bit to that. Where Jaden McDaniels is not a great shooter. He took 9 threes last game.
know.
You know, like sometimes there is just a philosophy of a team of like, we just, hey, again, what was the big line today? Process of results. Of our process is, if they're not going to guard you, you're taking 9 threes. And it has to be, put it out of your head about results. If you take them and you miss all 9, so be it. But this is who we are. And Dallas, even honestly, Indiana has it. You watch Indiana play, Ben Shepherd, Nemhard, these guys who are like young, decent players, they have the greenest of lights. That team plays wild boy basketball, but they all have
Matt
this,
Ishbia basketball.
they all have the confidence of like, yeah, this is what we do. It's just process. I'm open. I'm supposed to shoot this. I'm not a good shooter, but F it. This is what we're doing. And I just think Denver could use a little of that, because I think it'll help guys like Christian.
There is this is why this stuff is also difficult, man. Like, there's an irony to the way that just honing in on the 2-man game like helped them go 16-4 and win their
Because it's
first
the
ever
most
title.
important thing.
But then also you have to be able to back it then out again. And because you get to a point where it's, oh, Murray and Jokic don't have it. What do we do?
I know.
And there was not an answer to that question.
And all the corner threes were taken by Aaron Gordon, which is like not what you want.
They looked great when they were going in.
Yeah, but it also
Exactly.
was preceded by a loud no in the bar every single time right before he shot it.
Even when he was hitting those ones.
Totally.
Game
No! And then he made it, you're
five,
like, all right. It wasn't like, shoot again.
all right, let's take our last break. On the other side, Jamal Murray. Very interesting comments from both Michael Malone and Calvin Booth on Jamal Murray, as well as Michael Porter. Interesting stuff there, in my opinion.
Denver's best roofers have joined the DNVR team. It's our guys. You hear it right there. Red Hawk Roofing. Quality materials, decades of experience, quick response time. They are Colorado's best estimators and contractors. They're huge DNVR supporters. If you hang out at the DNVR Bar, you'll probably run into these guys. Nuggets games, they're here. Avs games, they're here. Huge Denver sports fans. So we love them. They'll give you a free no obligation roof and property inspection. They'll give you a free in-depth photo report for all inspections as well. With hail season coming, don't wait. Take care of any issues before the big storms hit. They will give you a free upgrade to a hail impact resistance shingle. If you're looking for a new roof over your home or business, be sure to check out Red Hawk Roofing, redhawkroofing.com. Again, these guys, DNVR supporters, they're Denver through and through. They love Colorado sports teams, so show them some love if you need new roofing over your home or business. Just tell them we sent you their way.
We're all about clubs. We want people to be in the club. We want people to be diehards.
Hell yeah.
We want people to be on the inner circle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you can be in Circle K's inner circle with their free membership. We've got that QR code there on the screen. It's really easy to download. You could just scan that, enter your email and your phone number. You're going to get fully enrolled. You're going to get lots of sweet deals as well, such as your first 5 Polar Pops are free. I like to imagine D-Line imagining just doing his life over again so he didn't have to pay for those first 5 Polar Pops.
I do.
You know what I
I'm
mean?
telling you, like the amount of manual labor I would have done would have been gone well into the floor. I wouldn't have done anything.
Yeah.
I would have gotten free Polar Pops.
If I had known.
Telling you, man.
Thirst meet your match, my friend. Enjoy your member exclusive beverage deal. Inner Circle members, like potentially you, can get any size Polar Pop or Froster for just 69 cents. Nice. Not in the copy. Now through September 3rd or for 79 cents for non-members. Find it in the app. Just go to the Inner Circle offers. Strange things are afoot at the Circle K, fellas, like the membership. Sign up with the QR code on the screen or visit www.circlek.com/inner circle for more information on how to become an Inner Circle member.
All right, back here, final segment, DNVR Nuggets Podcast. We're breaking down the presser today with the brass of the Denver Nuggets. Question on Jamal Murray and how do you evaluate his season? And this is what Michael Malone had to say. Both guys answered, but we'll start with Malone. When you lose in the playoffs, that has to motivate you. You look at Jamal Murray's numbers last year compared to this year, the productivity, meaning last year, was a whole different level. And we've got to find ways to get him healthy and consistent. And the only way to do that is being in the gym and working and having a routine and having routine discipline, which is a very interesting thing you'd say.
Yeah.
That's not something I would say about you, D-Line.
No.
Like, how can you be better next year? Well, if you have better routine and
Well,
you're working.
what you would say is like, how are you going to make better shirts? And I'd be like, I'd draw every day.
Yeah.
He did say it was everyone.
It was of course. But and then he says, knowing Jamal, I fully expect him to be back, all these things. And he says, it's not just Jamal, it's everyone. Malone is very good at, hey, I'm making my point, you know what I'm saying, but I'm going to also make sure that nobody feels too targeted here. But at the end, he left with this line. That will lead to him having a bounce-back season. The implication of a bounce-back season is you have to bounce back from something. So I just feel like there was a full veil. Like, we've been talking about it a lot, Murray not being in shape. It was all year long. It's been a thing that has been, for me personally, I've been banging this drum. It was nice to see Michael Malone come out and more or less say the exact same thing, because Michael Malone is the guy who least criticizes directly his own players.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to me, hearing that, we're in the portion of the season now where it's no longer the season, so you can be a little bit more truthful. You're not trying to hype your guys up. You're trying, and not only that, like Michael Malone is being made to answer for why the team didn't perform. And I mean, so much of why the team didn't perform is because of just simply Jamal Murray. Like Jamal Murray not being quick, not being able to be relied upon like he was the season before, not being there physically for a lot of games. And, and it's like, this is another way to talk to guys and to put public pressure on them outside of just, you're letting me and the team down. It's like, everybody kind of knows what the deal is. So if you're not in shape moving forward, you're going to be called out for it by not just us. Like, everyone's going to see it.
Yeah. It's a nice little challenge to Jamal Murray ahead of the offseason. That's got to be the message, and I think that was the message here. Like, you've got to come into next season ready to go. You got to be healthy and ramping up and just ready to hit the ground running. unlike he was this season. You know, he wasn't that guy at the beginning of this season. So I liked it. I liked challenging him a little bit. Also, he's up for a contract extension. I wonder what happens with that this summer, too. That could add another layer to this as well. But I liked what both of them said.
Well, to that point, Calvin also says of Jamal, I think you got to look at other great players and what have they done. You need to do some investigating. You win a championship. How have other great players, especially guards, got a repeat win? What did they do to prepare themselves for that? He needs to look into that. And then he says, obviously he wore down in the playoffs. Ant's one of the best on-ball defenders in the NBA. He needs to be in condition to get off ball and run around. So again, both guys brought up conditioning as a thing that Jamal Murray can improve in himself. And then I thought, Cal, one of the reasons I love bringing up the Kyrie point, it was something we talked about on the All-NBA show earlier today, but it's also a thing where it's like, yeah, you know what? Playing off, you always wonder, why don't guys play off ball more? It takes a lot of energy to play off ball. Steph Curry?
It's also, that's honestly among the most impressive things about Steph to me. I just feel like, how is he not, because shooting threes when you're exhausted. It's
the hardest thing on earth.
And you're like, and he's getting like 13 of them up. You're like, dude, how do you do this? and honestly, one of the answers when I looked more into it, Steph is a freak about his workouts, his routine, about his body, in a good way, right? So that's these are all things. And again, like, it's not that Jamal doesn't work hard or whatever. I'm sure he works hard.
You have to work hard to be in the NBA.
You have to be.
But there's a difference between
There
there's
are
a difference between
levels to
elite.
this. And how disciplined and committed to the routine are you? And then also, man, like, I'll just say, and I'm really not trying to pile on. I just think this is the conversation this summer. Sometimes Murray just says it in his pressers. I'll be there when it matters. You know what I mean? Or like, and you're like, yeah,
that's
man,
gone. That's old.
Maybe the expectation has to be different. Maybe it all matters, and you need to be there for all of it. And I just think it's, whether it's Murray, Porter, or Jokic, or any of these guys, like, these guys are all committed to a process, and there's routine, and there's discipline, and there's little things, and no one guy can act like they're above it, you know? And that applies to every player in the league. And honestly, when you look at the very, very, very best of the best, some of what separates them is their near psychopathic commitment to their routines and their discipline and how prepared they are, so that even when things are less than ideal, they can still perform at optimal standards. Whatever.
100%. And it's funny, we complained earlier in the year, like November, Murray staggering with the bench, how often he'd just be in the quarter standing there. And you're like, well, you can put Justin Holiday there if you're just going to have a shooter in the corner. But I honestly think part of that is, no, that takes a different stamina. It's like, oh, second shift is with the bench. Now I have to up it. If Reggie has the ball, I got to run around and, you know, create gravity around the court and this or that. And to do that, it takes an enormous amount. But the bigger story here is another one. All year took a lot of shit for this. I even got a DM earlier in the year. I never responded to a guy, but he tells me he had a sister's husband's neighbor that works at UC Health, and Murray's banged up, and you need to lay off him. He's not out of shape. He's just banged up. And I remember being so offended by this because I'm like, you think I don't talk to people in the org?
Well, that's the thing.
You know, you think I'm just making this up from my couch? Like, I'm not just a guy.
That's the thing is that, yes, like, you know, Adam's being told things.
And I'm glad they came on wax today. Like, that was the biggest thing is I was like, you only make a comment like that about one of your key players unless it's such a big deal that you can know. Because you'll protect guys for minor offenses. Of
course.
Misdemeanors, like, hey, he's doing fine on that. Like, don't worry. Yeah. But when there's a major offense, it's, hey, this guy's got to do it. And today, both guys were like, conditioning is a factor for him.
And it's also about what do you do when you recognize that injuries are a problem for you. Like, I don't necessarily blame Jamal for any one injury.
1,000%.
But is there a player on this team who had some pretty severe injuries who has figured out a way to stay available? And a lot of that is luck too. A lot of that is luck too. It's not as simple as just one guy wants to and the other doesn't. It's just these are like the insane conversations for separating the best of the best at the highest level.
Yeah.
There's intense competition. There's a lot of money in this sport. And it's about doing every little thing you can. And by the way, just to put a bow on it for me, I say all of this stuff about Jamal because I think Jamal's capable of every last ounce of it.
This is the thing about it.
Every last ounce of it.
People be like, oh, you're low on Jamal. No, I'm freaking high as hell on him. Yeah. He's unbelievable.
Yeah.
He's better than all these dudes.
He should be
at his
better
best.
And when I know I took a lot of, he's not an all-star and people didn't love that. I want him to be.
Yeah.
And he's good enough to be. So these are I think maybe just some of the tough conversations about turning that corner. Because Murray himself has said he wants to be the best player that's ever played. Sometimes these conversations have to happen.
Right. Lastly, they did talk about Michael Porter, and I thought there was one really interesting line from Calvin. Again, you're always minding the little lines.
Of course.
Right?
You only get so many. You have to look between
you
every
have to.
line.
And he talked about how do you free about Michael Porter and how he can improve. And he says, how do you free yourself? Do you run harder? Do you set more screens? Then he goes, do we look for you more at different kinds of ways to get you in different areas? There's a lot. And this is a nice, Porter has some things he can work on, screening, running more off ball, this or that. And our team, notably Coach Malone sitting across from me, probably can run some different actions for him to involve him. And I think this is the thing you're talking about. That two-man game is so good that it swallowed up other aspects of what the Nuggets are capable of. And you won a title with it. We know it's great. But how do you get better? Maybe it's we have this weapon over here. Let's cultivate it into something else so it's even greater. Even if the two-man game is still our bread and butter, it'll be nice if we had a thing so that you can't just stick Jaden McDaniels on Mike and tell him just stand there. Actually, let's punish that now by running him around and doing some stuff.
I think Michael Porter has maxed out what he can do in the Nuggets offense when Denver has set stuff up like they've had stuff set up in the last couple of years.
Right.
Based out of the Jokic-Murray two-man game with Michael Porter, as that guy, I think he's maxed that out. I think we saw that this season. But I do think there's so much more potential for him within the offense if Denver just rethinks things. And I'm going to keep coming back to this all summer. Like, the Nuggets just need to rethink everything that they do in the regular season, from rotations to lineups to how many different guys they play to how they use Michael Porter, even to reorganizing the offense a little bit. And I think they'll definitely have to do this if KCP leaves and Christian Brown steps in. But they've got to just reimagine stuff a little bit. And I think if they do, Michael Porter, there's more for him to give in the offense that way.
I just thought that was a really interesting note. I would love to see Michael Porter as a more dynamic tool in the tool belt. And again, if there was one thing that I think about this season, the more I think about it, especially as I watch Indiana and Dallas, two teams that I think play incredibly freely, even Boston to some extent. I think Denver has, when you have continuity, you have a formula that works.
Yep.
You can't let it yourself become just that. You've got to be able to be a little more flexible, even if it's just to get you through the regular season.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's just, Mike's on a heater in January. Let's turn the dial up on him for a little bit so he feels good about it. Maybe he gets player of the week or this or that. But let's just find different ways to win. And I think Denver has become a little rigid because the formula works. And it's like you just play that note over and over and over again, and it gets stale even if it's working. And I think Denver can probably up some of that stuff with Mike in particular, should he be part of the team next year, which we all anticipate. My only last note I have here, guys, is Vlatko Cancar playing for Team Slovenia this summer and playing in the qualifier.
Man, it's wild how understated it is, like how badly we needed Vlatko.
I know.
Like, he really, really would have made a big difference in this Wolves series, I believe. I hope he get Vlatko back. The other thing I just want to say quickly, I hope that Jamal Murray, when looking at other guards, does not look at Luka Doncic. He just comes back, he's smoking. He weighs 20 more pounds.
What do I need to do to break this defense? Become like Luka. He's huge.
He just buys a hookah for his house.
Vogt didn't like that one. All right. What else? Vlatko Cancar playing, though?
Wasn't paying attention. I love that. Well, Booth said, just to be clear, he said he believes he's playing. I think that means he's playing, just for what it's worth. I'm excited about it because they're in qualifiers and they're going to need Vlatko, by the way. Luka's going to be fresh off a finals run. And Vlatko...
He'll be fine. Luka could play 100 games in a season and be fine, I feel like.
But Vlatko's...
Luka's ramping up to the Olympics right now.
Yeah.
He kind of does do that. He loves playing with Slovenia so much. But Vlatko's a big part of that team. We'll see... how well he's immediately able to respond just in terms of confidence, physical confidence, coming back and just doing everything as hard as you do at that high level. Some guys have to learn to trust their bodies again. But it's nice for him to get some games in, because I did look back at this year and think, man, Vlatko probably could have helped.
Yeah.
Vlatko probably could have helped. So maybe working some of the rust off early and working his way back into shape starting early is a good thing.
It's insane how much the backup five ended up sinking them. We complained about it all year. Like in going into the trade deadline, all of that. Like, I'm with Michael Malone, like slyly pointing at
Made moves. They made moves.
well, like why we couldn't get a Daniel Gafford, I don't know. Like we absolutely needed a backup 5, and Vlatko would have been that. Like our solution to the backup 5 was just to make Aaron Gordon more tired and be undersized.
Very interesting stuff. You can watch the presser in its entirety on our YouTube channel. And if you're, don't take all of our words for it. I mean, if you want to go and check these out, you can get your own read for it. We have the entire unfiltered video for you to check out there. Kale, we've been going short all off season so far, right?
No.
Oh, we're going long.
Oh,
Yeah.
have we gone
We're
long?
on the show under an hour again.
Really?
We haven't gone short in 2.5 years.
We've
that's
never
right.
wrong with us.
What do you think the shortest show we ever did was?
56.
Yeah, 56 minutes. or
How come
something.
we went long as soon as the Nuggets got knocked out?
Yeah.
Like, let's
There's
turn
a lot
it
to
up.
talk about.
Lot to
Dude,
say.
I think the main concept here, just in general, is that the Nuggets didn't need to change anything, and now they do. Like
Yeah.
it was
Oh,
all
so true.
It was all working, and
So true.
you don't change shit until it proves to be.
Yep.
And what happened this season? They tied their franchise record for games won. They were cruising. I was sure they were going to beat the Wolves. All of us were, and then it just didn't work. And now you're like, God damn it. Okay, well, fuck. We got to change some shit.
It's the first time it's not ascending. It's a
Yeah.
very interesting thing. The
The first backward step.
first
we took, dude.
backward step. So, a lot to talk about.
Cedric Exquisite. The Mavs are the Wolves' kryptonite. Skull emoji. Kyrie
Go.
looking like Jason Terry / Kid back in 2011. I have their poster, by the way. Sunglasses emoji. Win / Eric. Mavs in 6.
Mavs and 6.
I bet they
Eric.
built Celtics.
I'm saying, dude,
too.
I honestly say Mavs in 4.
I love that. You were just at Wolves, Celtics. Now it's Mavs all the way.
Well, I saw them play.
Oh, okay.
And then I realized like
Gotcha.
how they matched up against one another.
Yeah, yeah.
I do love also just the insane overreaction that happens from every
Yeah.
single playoff game.
Bro.
Kyrie is the greatest player to ever put.
You got to hop in All NBA because Wolves fans have been in All NBA. You don't friendly
of
ribbing me
course,
or
of
this or
course.
that on that show. Well, today all the Mavs fans are Wolves fans awfully quiet. I was like, man, you guys sound the exact same. I can't tell who's
Just
who.
doesn't matter.
Every fan base sounds the exact
It's so
same.
good. I mean, that's the whole point. That's what this whole thing is.
Awfully quiet.
Oh,
out
that's
there,
my
Wolves
favorite.
fans.
Awfully
I'm like, oh my
quiet.
God.
Super fun to observe when you have no stakes.
Well,
It's
yeah.
actually
It
hilarious.
actually really
When
is.
You're like, I would never be like
Yeah,
that.
but when you're in it, you're like, I'm fighting for my life.
Have you seen those dance parties where they're all wearing headphones so you can't hear the music?
Yeah.
and people-
Yeah.
That's what it's like reading
Totally.
comments where you're like, you don't
Totally.
look cool at all.
Yeah.
Maverick 36. D-line Game 7 was a microcosm of the series and season. While it was winnable, Nugs lost due to energy and the vibes not being immaculate.
The vibes were not immaculate.
the
for
youth
sure.
need their
Confirmed.
reps from the coach.
But they did win during the season.
Hart Malone.
No, they didn't.
Oh.
They lost it all.
It's Josh Barnett from Down Under. I'll say it. Next season is the year of Jamal Murray.
Oh, the year
Good
of
Josh,
Jamal.
because I'm not saying it.
The year of Jamal.
Someone has to say
Kale,
it.
Someone
Yeah.
has to say
Streets
it.
are
It's
saying.
not going to be me.
I hope Jamal says
I
it.
don't know if the streets are saying that. I hope Jamal says it.
Liz A, 5280.
Yeah, I'm
saw,
going to need him to say it.
I know.
saw 82 games in the playoffs. Jamal has been the culprit. Hate that his incredible talent was just absent. I coined him the Enigma.
I will tell you this. I think I agree with you, but I'll also agree he was the culprit for them winning a title. So
I know, that's it.
Right.
Jamal's the weirdest guy, and we all kind of. And it's nice today. Was in some ways, don't you feel like it's some clarity, it's some closure? It's almost like closure in that it's like, all right, guys, that is a story, not
Yep.
the only story, but it's a major story, and now everybody kind of knows it. And now the question is, what do you do next?
That's exactly right. It's just life. Life, in many ways, and most assuredly, NBA basketball is all about adjustments. You don't adjust, you get punched in the face, and boy, did they get punched. And here we are, and now it's adjustment time.
But
baby.
nothing to me would be more compelling than a group of athletes just digging deep about like, who am I as a competitor and what can I do differently? It's always about like, if the player 8 or 9 was different. Maybe sometimes that's the answer. But to me, the most interesting one is always the guys looking at themselves and going, I can be better, and I will be.
Fellas, what a long show. What a good one. Hope you guys all enjoyed it. Go
Wait,
check
did
out
you
the
just put
presser.
on? I was positive you put on sunglasses for a segue into something. You're just that big of an asshole. You just
I'm
put
not-
sunglasses on.
I'm off the show tomorrow, fellas. I'm taking a little long weekend.
Wait, you are?
Yeah, I'm off the show tomorrow, man.
Oh, okay.
Dad's
I
away.
literally talked to. Anyway, hit the like button on the way out. We'll see ya.
nightmare.